What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Stella Herself podcast, the podcast where we learn how to better ourselves in order to create a better world. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. I hope you have all had a great week so far. Mercury is finally out of retrograde, 100% out of the shadow period. So we should be feeling a lot lighter and just like things are flowing a little more smoothly. I know I do. I finally am settled in my new place and get back to healthy habits such as my meditation routine, getting enough sleep, all of those things that I feel like have not been number one on my priority list the last few weeks. So I know I personally am excited to get back into it. And that's kind of one of the main things I wanted to chat with you guys about today is it's never too late to begin again. And I feel like this can apply to so many different things. You know, we're human, we make mistakes. And if you listen to this podcast on the regular, you probably are someone who is at least interested in self-growth and self-development. And I know for myself, when I'm trying to do something like a meditation routine, or if you're trying to eat healthier, get into a workout, if you're trying to change your relationship patterns or something like that, it can feel so disheartening when you screw up or slip back into old habits or just do something, make a decision that you ultimately are not really proud of. So today I wanted to talk about what happens and what we should do when we do make mistakes and when we are beating ourselves up about, not being perfect or going back to what we're used to, even if we know it's ultimately not the best for us. So I came across a technique called cognitive restructuring, and this goes hand in hand with cognitive behavioral therapy. If you kind of get yourself used to something and if you keep associating good or better memories with a circumstance, like let's say you have a fear of flying, instead of just taking medication for it, which obviously is very helpful, but if you can actually start to really practice associating different memories and sensations with flying, like, okay, this isn't scary, like I can do this, that's going to be what your brain associates it with rather than fear or panic or whatever it may be, and you can kind of apply that to anything. And this technique, I know at least cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT is often used for people with anxiety, and it's, I think, the number one most effective method of overcoming anxiety and feeling better, over medication, over really anything else, because you're literally rewiring your brain. And this is an actual technique studied. This isn't some kind of manifestation, no offense, but you know what I mean? This is an actual thing. So when it comes to cognitive restructuring, it's a technique that's used in cognitive behavioral therapy. So this is from choosingtherapy.com. I will link the article down below, but they say the goal of CR, or, cognitive restructuring, is to be able to address unhealthy thoughts and ideally to have a more healthy perspective. So I'm just going to go through the 4 techniques and then we're going to discuss. So the first one is to identify automatic thoughts. So these are the thoughts that come up, when we do make a mistake, just the things that automatically pop into our brain. And it's usually a result of childhood, maybe what adults in your life told you at the time, oh, you're not smart, you're not enough, you can do better. And because this was ingrained into us at such a young age, it is very automatic. And you have to be super, super aware and mindful of when this comes up, because otherwise, again, because it's so subconscious and so ingrained in our brains or, in someone's brain, you're just going to kind of think that's normal in reality. So that's the first thing, is just to identify oh, that was an automatic thought. And already just identifying it kind of creates a separation between you and that. It's a thought, it's automatic, it's not reality. So the second technique is to identify cognitive distortions, and this is negative or unhealthy thoughts and beliefs, all or nothing thinking, black and white thinking, just very extreme methods of thinking. If you're being delusional, toxic positivity. And again, this is just kind of practicing mindfulness and being aware of when these things come into your mind. And already just by doing that, identifying it and just kind of pausing and being mindful, you're already separating yourself from the unhealthy thought or pattern. So the third technique is to dispute thoughts. And this is to look for basically reality, to ground yourself in reality, to look for the actual objective facts of the situation. And then also keep your eye out for statements that maybe you're telling yourself that aren't true and that are kind of distorting what's actually in front of you. So let's say you mess up on something and you think you have an automatic thought of, or like a black and white thought of like, oh, I'm so bad at everything. And it's like, okay, like you have to tell yourself, like, I understand you're frustrated or upset you didn't get this right the first time, or that this is taking so long, or that this isn't what you expected, but that's not true. There are things that you're good at, and it's not really realistic to make a statement like that you're not good at anything just because you're frustrated over this one thing. So the fourth thing is to replace your thoughts. And this is kind of the action that you take after you identify them. They say, find a way to apply the rational or objective perspective to keep yourself from spiraling back into negative thoughts. So I kind of just gave an example right there, okay, yeah, I know you're frustrated right now, but it's not true that you're bad at everything. There are a lot of things that you are good at. And with that being said, this is a little frustrating. This is a little harder than you anticipated. This is taking longer than you thought. And it's normal to feel frustrated over that. And you kind of have to treat yourself or like that voice in your head like a little kid and gentle parent yourself, because again, so much of this is so ingrained in our subconscious, and it's not your actual thoughts or beliefs about yourself, it's things that are very ingrained in you that maybe you're living your life by subconsciously, but you can change that. Another distortion is mind reading. So if you're feeling like, someone actually asked me in a TikTok live the other day, how do you overcome gym anxiety? And I think gym anxiety is a really big thing. Maybe you're feeling a little self-conscious because this is something new for you. So you're assuming like, oh my God, they're looking at me because they think I'm stupid. They know I don't know what I'm doing. And it's like, okay, that's not really realistic. Like, yeah, okay, I'm thinking this because I'm feeling a little self-conscious because I'm doing something new. But hey, I'm putting myself out of my comfort zone, and people can think what they want, but ultimately I'm bettering myself. So who's really winning in this situation? Who cares if you look dumb, quote unquote, if you're actually doing something to better yourself in your life and also get out of your comfort zone. Another example of replacing thoughts is, and they say, this can look like when you immediately start to think, they all think I don't know what I'm doing. You stop yourself and replace it with, I don't know what they're thinking. However, I can see they took my perspective seriously and are discussing it. And this is like, I guess, kind of a little more work related. Which indicates that they feel comfortable with my work and I am competent. So then they have a little list of tips for getting the most out of cognitive restructuring. Practice daily gratitude. Remind yourself that feelings and situations are temporary. Consider different perspectives in regards to your thoughts and situations. Blame isn't always necessary, but it's important to take responsibility if there is a mistake. If possible, brainstorm several solutions to create a habit of exploration. This keeps you open-minded and allows space for your brain to consider options versus fixating. And then remember that you're not alone. And they say cognitive restructuring was created because many people throughout time have struggled with negative thought patterns and beliefs. And I just know for myself, especially as I get older, it's just crazy to realize how much we keep ourselves back. We hold ourselves back just due to our minds and our minds getting in the way. And it almost feels like, your mind's playing these little tricks on you, like, oh, you're not good enough, or oh, this and that. And so much of it is just so hard to catch and to actually consciously remind yourself, like, okay, that's not reality, especially if you are already feeling a little insecure about something or getting out of your comfort zone and you're uncomfortable. It's like, you're not in the best, most stable mindset already to be like counteracting your negative thoughts that have been with you since you were like a child, So it's definitely a lot. But again, I think mindfulness goes a long way. And then also just talking about it, with a trusted friend, with a therapist if you can. But this definitely is a really effective way of rewiring your brain and overcoming those thoughts. Something I personally have been trying to do as far as cognitive behavioral therapy and like exposure therapy is if I get the slightest little feeling of like, I don't want to do that, and not in like not in an intuitive way, but like in an anxious way, I have just been trying to force myself to do it. So like the other day, I kind of wanted to, this is like the dumbest reason, but I kind of wanted to go get a coffee, but then I was feeling a little stressed out because last time I went to this coffee shop, it was super busy and just kind of overwhelming, and I had gone when I first woke up, and I, of course, had not had a coffee yet, and I just was not prepared. I did not anticipate it to be so busy, and I just wasn't prepared to deal with that amount of people having personal space issues, and it was just very stressful. So I had this memory of it, and I was like, oh, I want a coffee. I want an iced coffee because I didn't have any in the house, and then I kind of had this thought like, oh, I don't want to, like, it's gonna be scary. And I was like, no, we're gonna go because we need to make a new memory with this experience, because I do not want to build up this, resistance, not resistance, but like resisting going to this coffee shop because it's like one of the closest ones, so I forced myself to go, and it was fine. Actually, the coffee ended up not being that good, but the experience was fine. And so I've just really been trying to be mindful of when I do feel that resistance and just kind of forcing myself to do something despite being uncomfortable or a little anxious, because I'm just sick of, it's like I want to fully live my life, and I feel like anxiety gets in the way so often, and so I just always want to actively try to overcome that and work through that. So let me know if you guys relate to that. Let me know if you struggle with anxiety, but yeah, I really do feel like this is one of the most helpful ways to help with that, because you can kind of take baby steps, and again, just I think anything that gets you more in touch with yourself and all parts of yourself, even the parts that, are giving you negative self-talk, you have to confront these things in order to overcome them. And it does take a lot of work, but ultimately that is how you're actually going to like get through something, is facing it. So switching gears, I just had to do a quick little rant on the topic of positivity. Just kidding. And then this is also kind of related to psychology. So, and then I also wanted your guys' opinion. Okay, so quick story time. When I went to LA on one of the last days, me and Sonia went to the beach in Malibu, and it was like a Monday afternoon, so there was barely any people there. It was so nice. This beach is an empty beach, okay? Like 2 groups passed us each time. It was like one family and then like a dad with a little kid just walked past, But there's like nobody really sitting around. There's people sitting way down there, way down the opposite way. Like we pretty much had this whole area to ourselves. It was like an empty beach. It was a Monday afternoon. So there's this lady that's kind of walking back and forth, and it looks like she's like, there were no shells on this beach, so I don't know what she was looking at, but it looked like she was looking for seashells or something, just the way she was like stopping and picking something up off the ground, but there wasn't really shells, so I don't know if she was just looking at the sand. Like, I don't know. She kind of is like, keeps walking back and forth in front of us, and I'm just kind of like, okay, like, just kind of thinking, oh, she's like looking at something, she's gonna walk away. Like, I'm just keeping an eye out, you always gotta keep an eye. And then she sits right in front of us, like probably 10 feet. And she just kind of popped a squat and was sitting like right in front of us, like in between us and the water. And then at first I'm like, oh, she's probably just looking at something, but she stays there for a good amount of time. And I have seen people talk about this before on TikTok. All I said in my TikTok was, what's the psychology behind people doing this? Like, I was not like, what is this crazy B word doing? Like, I was literally like, what is the psychology? And I was just kind of looking confused in the video. People did not take it well. It started gaining traction, and all the comments were like, how dare you post this? I don't think I was wrong. I was just confused because what, like, if it's an empty beach, why would you do that? Like, why would you sit right in front of somebody and then also not look at them or say anything to them? And then additionally, to the people that were like, how dare you? Like, she's just lonely. She wanted a friend. You would enjoy this? Like, if you're visiting your friend and you guys are trying to have a nice little day and then this lady's like sitting right in front of you, like too close for comfort, like that's weird, right? It was just odd. But I genuinely was just curious because I always think about that. You know, when you're on an empty train or bus or something and somebody comes and sits right next to you, or if you're in a movie theater that's kind of empty and someone comes and sits like really close to you, it's like, I just would never do that. Like, I prefer to have my space. And so I was actually looking it up because I'm like, okay, I think I kind of know why people do this. You know, it's like, okay, I think it's a lot of the time a subconscious thing. So I looked it up and there honestly wasn't a lot of research. There was a couple articles and they were just kind of saying what is obvious, that a lot of the time it's subconscious. Some people just prefer to be around other people. Some people do feel lonely, and so sitting next to someone else makes them feel safe. I'm like, unless it was literally like someone crazy on the train or something and I'm sitting next to like another girl or just like someone that I really don't get any creepy or weird vibes from at all, it's like often I'm gonna feel safer kind of being by myself, being away from someone that I don't know, you know? So I just thought that was kind of interesting. And I just thought it was very interesting how many people on my video were taking offense to it. I'm like, are y'all the ones who are doing this? Because I just think it would have been way less weird, like going back a few episodes ago to the Power of Strangers book. I think it would have been way less odd if she had just said hi or like waved, made eye contact and smiled something. Like, it was kind of getting to the point where I'm like, do I go and say like, hey, like, what's up? Because it was just so odd. It was just so odd. And if it had been a man, I definitely would have been super like creeped out. It's just like, you're kind of getting in our personal space. It's an empty beach. Like, why do you have to go right in front of us? You could have gone next to us and it would have been less weird. Like, now you're blocking our view. I think we were trying to take pictures as well, so we kind of were getting uncomfortable because we're like in our bikinis and it's just like, why are you over here? Like, it was just odd. And yeah, I just thought it was very odd that so many people took so much offense to that. So I would love to ask y'all, are you the same way? Do you think it's weird if someone comes and sits right next to you if they don't have to? Like, there's other spaces for them to sit or be? Or are you the person that is doing that? I think it's just like, read the room. Not everyone wants to sit by you, you know? And everyone's different. Like, but I think also just, if you're like that, it's like, okay, then own it. Say hi. Like, actually try to make a connection or like make yourself known. Don't just kind of like awkwardly sit and not look at someone or say anything, but want to sit right next to them. That's like very odd to me. And like, okay, if you want connection that bad, like, okay, then get out of your comfort zone, look someone in the eye, make a conversation, at least say hi, at least wave, at least make eye contact and just kind of do a nod or something, because otherwise I just think it's kind of rude to get in someone's personal space when like they didn't ask you to do that. So I did talk about it in a recent Q&A video, but I wanted to give you guys just a little more tea about my thoughts about LA since I went back, and it was my first time back since moving away in 2022. I was a little, not nervous, but I was very just intrigued, I guess, to see how I would feel. I think part of me was scared that I would want to move back, only because I just signed my lease out here. And although it's not like I felt that so strongly, part of me is kind of like, damn, it is so much easier to live out there. Like, way easier, less stressful. I personally have way more friends out there, so part of me is like, what am I doing? But then I just kind of have to remind myself why I chose to move away. And, you know, it was very isolating to live there a lot of the time. And certain things like the weather, when we did go to the beach, driving through Malibu, looking at all the beauty and the nature, a lot of that you just get very used to when you live there. And so, of course, you know, it's been a while since I'd been there, so I had this overwhelming, like, oh my god, so pretty, oh my god, like, appreciation for it. But that kind of goes away a little bit when you do live there, because you just get used to it. And then you also do get very used to the weather, and you just kind of get acclimated. Like, you will start to feel cold when it's like 55, you know? Another thing I think about is I feel like for the most part. And I was actually talking about this on my TikTok live as well. But I feel like it's a little easier to find guys with real careers and jobs in New York, just because there is like finance and just a lot of business that goes on here, versus in LA. I feel like for the most part you're way more likely to meet someone that is trying to be an actor, trying to do music, you know, trying to pursue something in that field, which is fine. But I feel like especially if someone is young, it's just like, do you want to be dealing with that? And I just know for myself, sprinkle, it's like I'd rather have a man with like an established career. Like, let me be the girly pop. Not to say that there's not guys, you know, that aren't successful doing those things, especially in LA, or that there's not guys with those more real careers, quote unquote. And then also that still exists in New York too. There's a lot of these like little influencer, like, I don't know, fashion bros, models, like all that kind of thing. But I feel like it's a little more balanced for the most part from what I've experienced. In LA, it's just like, I don't need to date someone that is trying to start a clothing line, you know? And of course that exists out here too. But, and then, so I was talking about this on my live, and this girl was like, I was dating a finance bro that was also trying to be an actor. And I was like, LOL. And then she was like, I got the worst of both worlds. And then I'm like dying at that point. And then she comes back for the kicker. She said, and he was 5'5". Which there's nothing wrong with being 5'5", but just adding to that ambiance, you know? Okay, so I did want to answer a question from IG. But yeah, so I guess following up, I definitely want to go out to LA more. Also, I just feel like that trip was so short. There was a lot of people I wanted to spend more time with, or that I just didn't even get to see because it was so quick. And I can definitely see why people live bi-coastally, because they are very different places, and there's definitely perks to both. So this is not an I hate LA account. So somebody asked tips for slowing down and tuning out the world, and I feel like that's very on point with what I was talking about in the beginning of this episode, getting back to a wellness routine. So I know for myself, doing things that ground me, and I'm already a very grounded person, just in terms of vibes. But I feel like, especially as someone who has dealt with anxiety, I just know when I don't feel anxious, and when I feel truly in the moment and just good, and like my body just feels calm, my nervous system is relaxed, I feel just very in my body. Versus when I'm experiencing anxiety, I mean stress, to me, like, stress and anxiety kind of feel different in my body. I don't know. Let me know if you relate. But especially when I'm experiencing anxiety, it's kind of like this fluttery feeling that almost makes me feel like it's like a jumpy type of energy. Like, I'm not just like still and present and grounded in my body. So things I do to help me get in that good grounded flow state. Number one, meditation. Listening to 528 hertz and laying on the ground for like 10 to 20 minutes. I like to do it especially after a workout, because it's usually still in the morning, but I still had a chance to get up, and like I just feel like if I try to do it right when I wake up, I just get sleepy. So it's like a little later in the morning, and that to me just provides really good longer term support. Sometimes when I meditate, I don't immediately feel calm after, to be honest. But I know it will help me later on in my day. And especially if you do it daily, even again for 10 or 20 minutes, it makes such a big difference in how you feel in the rest of your life. And reading that book, Love and Work, when he talks about panic attacks in the beginning, and I had just never heard panic attacks described this way, but he was like, it's basically, it's not the immediate circumstances, you know, right before the panic attack occurred that make you have one. It's just that your nervous system and your body can't take the pressure anymore. And so it's like everything else in your life that kind of leads up to this moment, and it kind of feels like it happens randomly, because you'll be like sometimes doing something that should be relaxing and it happens. And so meditation, and he says in the book that meditation is like the number one thing that helped with those panic attacks. Tony Soprano could take notes. No, Because again, it's like, it's not necessarily something, it can for sure make you feel better in the moment and immediately after, but it's something that's just going to help you so much in the rest of your day and in the rest of your life, because it overall just helps with mindfulness, being grounded and present. So that's the first thing. The second thing, working out. I always feel so much better even after a walk. So if you're feeling kind of like jittery and like anxiety, just going on a quick walk, and yoga, anything that's going to get you in your body. Sometimes lifting really heavy is exactly what I need, and it just feels so good and like gets rid of that stress or that anxiety or whatever. The third thing, and this is probably the number one thing that helps for me immediately, that's like, you know, natural, but EFT tapping. If you guys remember the episode I did at the beginning of last year with Teresa Lear Levine, she was kind of the one who introduced me, I think, like the first person that ever introduced me to EFT tapping. But it's basically tapping of different pressure points in a specific sequence. And she taught me a sequence, and I will always do that if I'm having trouble falling asleep, if my mind just feels very all over the place, if I feel anxiety and I don't know why. It just is, it immediately calms me and makes me feel grounded in my body. Like taking deep breaths, you know, can help. But compared to this, like I've never had something help so much immediately. And if you just look up EFT tapping sequence on YouTube, there are a lot of videos that you can watch, and they're very quick. It doesn't have to be super long, but that's also something that really helps. I think also limiting screen time and just making a conscious effort to disconnect and just be with yourself and be present. And sometimes when I have anxiety or I'm stressed about something that's going on in my life, like when I was like going through this searching for an apartment process, you know, that's like a lot of stress. And I just sometimes felt like being on my phone and just, you know, doom scrolling or just kind of trying to find entertainment to calm myself would just kind of make me feel worse and more like all over the place, even if what I was watching or reading on my phone wasn't necessarily stressful, like the news or something. It still would just kind of like, it's like, okay, I need to pause and like slow down. So that is also something I would recommend. And I think, and I've especially felt this since moving to the East Coast, and I think just in a faster paced environment, but you do have to genuinely make a conscious effort to disconnect and unwind and set aside specific time for that. Because otherwise, if you're just kind of waiting for it to happen on its own or naturally, you know, it's like, good luck. So I would love to hear what works for you as far as unwinding, grounding yourself, and relaxing. Also a big thing I'm currently doing, I feel like I could use a coffee right now so bad, y'all, but I want to practice this week, especially getting back to my wellness and grounded routine. Limiting caffeine. This is a relaxed, I think it's a relaxed mind tea from Yogi Tea. It has ashwagandha in it as well as a few other herbs. It does not make me sleepy. It just genuinely calms me and like makes me just feel less stressed. So this has been like my afternoon beverage rather than another coffee, and I feel like it helps so much. And then just being mindful of my caffeine intake. I do love a little black coffee in the morning. Like I just love the taste. I love how it makes me feel. But sometimes, you know, I'll want another cup just for the vibes and ambiance. Like I'll really be in the zone of editing or doing emails or whatever, and I have to ask myself, do I actually want the caffeine? So if I do want another cup, I'll make like a decaf cup, or I'll make a tea, and just, again, practicing mindfulness and asking yourself, well, what is it that I actually need, that my body needs right now, and what will make me feel good long term. So that's going to be all we talk about today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode and gained something from it. Let me know your thoughts on anything that I discussed down below and what you want me to talk about next week. Thank you guys so much for listening. Don't forget to share the episode, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye, everyone.